Welcome to another installment of Advanced Training for the Saints, where we take a look at unique ways of using eSword and studying the Bible with learning a couple of general rules to use in daily Bible study. Remember, the Holy Spirit speaks to us in three distinct ways. Through our prayer, in Bible study, and in daily events. And daily events being the middle of October here, is Israel was invaded. You got to watch out for the false prophets because they like to put an emphasis on, the false prophet represents one individual or one individual entity, and we're seeing a lot of stuff getting thrown out into, of course, the Muslims. It doesn't take a genius to figure out the Muslims are fake prophets. They're threatening jihad this weekend because of what's happening in Gaza. And, of course, that's easy to identify as a false prophet. We can put it right in there and we stand a pretty good chance of being right. But what about the false prophets on the Christian end? They can be just as dangerous. The ones that just come out and say, oh yeah, we knew Israel was going to be invaded. Well, why didn't they say anything? But at the end of it all, what do? They ask for donations. Okay, so you got to be careful with them. They're just as bad as the scammers. Anyway, what we're going to do today is take a look at Armageddon, and we're going to use a technique that's really useful. We're going to use the chain reference. So when we look at eSword, we have this chain reference called the TSK. All right, and what does that mean? It's a treasury of scriptural knowledge. It was compiled well over 100 years ago. And the thing about it is the people that compiled the TSK, which is verses that are linked to a particular verse, they didn't have the foresight, the daily events that we're seeing unfold today in 2023. So, how do we use the TSK? Good question. Well, basically, what we want to do is study Armageddon, and I highlighted Armageddon in red. I just did that so it would stand out and we could find it easy. What you do is you get your verse and you click on your verse, Revelation 16:16, and for some reason it pops up to the top and gets lost, so you got to scroll back down. But here we go. We got Revelation 16:16 highlighted. And we've got Revelation 16:16 highlighted in the TSK, Treasury of Scriptural Knowledge. And it gives us a number of links. Now, what do these links mean? Well, these are verses that the people that came up with a TSK thought linked back to, of course, being the key word here in verse 16, Armageddon. And we can just hover over these, which unfortunately it usually pops up, but when I'm recording and using this recorder, these things tend to not pop up. If I wasn't recording, they would pop up. But what we can do is we can just click on these and it'll take us right to the verse. So what do we get when we see Revelation 17:14? Together they will go to war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will defeat them because he is Lord of all lords and King of all kings, and he is called and chosen, and faithful ones will be with him. Well, okay. We don't read just one verse, we read the entire chapter, but we can get a pretty good flavor for what's in the chapter when we go to the introduction. And the introduction in Revelation 17:1 says, one of the seven angels who had poured out the seven bowls came over and spoke to me. Come with me, he said, and I will show you the judgment that is going to come on the great prostitute who rules over many waters. Okay, so this basically gives us a good introduction. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her, and people who belong to this world have been made drunk by the wine of her immortality. Now, there's a couple of key words that we can look at over here. When it's talking about wine, it takes us right back to what? Revelation 14 and the judgment, and the evil people were thrown into the wine press, blah, 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 the whole bit. Anyway, we don't want to get too far off the subject. What I'm going to do is click on over here. We can just look at the editor by clicking up over here on the editor. And I copied the Revelation 16:16, and we've got this, and we clicked on it, and we've got the linking verses. Now what you do is you see the first one they linked to it was Revelation 17:14. Why? Well, when we saw the angel came up to John and started explaining what he saw in Revelation 16, which was what? And we're going to read a little bit of Revelation 16. We're going to back up a little bit here into verse 13. And I saw three evil spirits that looked like frogs leap from the mouth of the dragon and the beast and the false prophet. So these three evil spirits have something to do with the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. Okay, they're basically following their commands. They're doing exactly what the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet tell them to do. They're working together. They are dynamic spirits who work miracles and go out to all the rulers of the world to gather them for battle against the Lord on that great judgment day of the Lord Almighty. Well, what do we see today? Obviously, we see, the Muslims are trying to gather together, but are we only facing the Muslims? We're actually facing off against some pretty distorted Christian religions that are grouping together. You can see the protests in the streets, blah, 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 the whole bit. So there's more false prophets covering more religions, including the Christian religion. Now, what we see in here is basically, we got to pay attention to some key words because of the simple fact that there are two battles, two wars. This first one that we've seen, they gather their armies in Armageddon. Now, if we look at the second battle, we see Revelation 20 has a second battle. When 1,000 years came to an end, Satan will be let out of his prison. He will go out to deceive the nations called Gog and Magog in every corner of the earth. Now, who gathered the armies in the first battle? It was the three dynamic spirits controlled by the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, right? Now, when we get to Revelation 20, after the 1,000 years where Satan was let out of his prison, he will go out to deceive the nations. Who is that? Satan. So, there we have it. First battle, the dynamic spirits gather the army. Second battle, Satan gathers his army himself. He will gather them together for battle, a mighty army as numerous as sand along the seashore. And I saw them as they went up in a broad plain and surrounded God's people and the beloved city, but fire from heaven came down on the attacking armies and consumed them. Now, the first time they gathered at what? Armageddon. Everybody understands that. The second one, they surrounded the beloved city. And if we look back at Revelation 20, it explains the beloved city is a new city of Jerusalem that comes down out of heaven after that 1,000 years, and then Satan's let loose. Then the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the fiery lake of burning sulfur, joining the beast and the false prophet. There they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Now, after the first battle, the beast and the false prophet were thrown into the lake of fire, and Satan was thrown into the bottomless pit for 1,000 years. Now, after that 1,000 years, Satan comes out, gathers his own army, and that's where Satan is thrown into the same lake of fire, joining the beast and the false prophet. So we got to understand there's two separate battles. The false prophet wants to confuse matters by putting these two battles together by using one verse about Armageddon and then jumping into another verse and using only part of it. He will deceive the nations called Gog and Magog. So they put Armageddon together with Gog and Magog, which are wrong. And they'll go ahead and they'll explain what they think this Gog and Magog is, and then it all seems to make sense, but it's a lie. So don't pay attention to these people when they combine the two battles. They don't want you to see there's two battles. Now, one of the next reference that the TSK gives us is Revelation 19:17 through 21. And this is probably one of the most important links that we have in here. So I copied it down here so we can go over it real quickly. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, shouting to the vultures, flying high in the sky, "Come, gather for the great banquet God has prepared. Come and eat the flesh of kings, generals, and strong warriors, of horses and their riders, and all humanity, both free and slave, great and small." Then I saw the beast and the kings of the world and their armies gathered to fight against the one sitting on the horse and his army. Who is it? The beast. In Revelation 19, we have the beast. Well, as we already saw, at the end of Revelation 16, it says the beast was thrown into the lake of fire, along with the false prophet. So the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet, who did mighty miracles on behalf of the beast, miracles that deceived all who had accepted the mark of the beast and who worshiped the statue. Both the beast and the false prophet were thrown alive into the fiery lake of burning sulfur. Okay, so this is Revelation 19, which tells us that Revelation 16, 17, 18, and 19 are explaining that first battle with a whole lot of details that we got to look at and try to decipher. Okay, but just understand that 16, 17, 18, and 19 are all talking about the first battle. Revelation 20 talks about the second battle. Their entire army was killed by the sharp sword that came from the mouth of the one riding on the white horse, and the vultures all gorged themselves on the dead bodies. Okay, so this is why it's important that Revelation 19, 17 through 21 is linked back to Revelation 16:16, because 100 or 200 years ago, they knew that this was all the description of one battle, and they knew that Revelation 20 told about a second battle where Satan gathers his army. Now, what we want to do is we want to kind of take a look at some of these other ones, and it's a good thing that these pop-ups, normal pop-ups in the window, don't work when I'm recording, but the links do, so we can click on the Judges 4 through 7 and see what that's talking about. And I'm just going to back up one verse, because one day seems to be a good place to begin. When we see a timing word, and this kind of grayish blue is timing words. One day she sent for Barak, son of Adman, who lived in Kadesh in the land of Nephilim. She said to him, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you. Call out 10,000 warriors from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun at Mount Tabor. And I will call out Sisera, commander of Jabin's army, along with his chariots and warriors, to the Kishon River. There I will give you victory over." Barak told her, "I will go, but only if you go with me." "Very well," she replied, "I will go with you. But you will receive no honor in the venture, for the Lord's victory over Sisera will be at the hands of a woman." So Deborah met with Barak in Kadesh. Now, does Judges 4:7 have really anything to do with Armageddon? I would say probably not. But we go on to the next one. This is basically, they use the word he here, and they're trying to emphasize the word he, you know. So when we get to Judges, they just thought it'd be really interesting to throw in, you know, a woman that actually got the glory. So to them, the people that put together the TSK thought this was important to read. I don't know why, but they said it. Okay, and if we look at Joel 3:9, the next link, "Say to the nations far and wide, get ready for the war, call out your best warriors, let all your fighting men advance for the attack. Hammer your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, train even the weaklings to be warriors." You might want to back up a couple of verses here, and we can go into the introduction, and it's a good place to start. "At the time of these events, says the Lord, when I will restore the prosperity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will gather the armies of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat." And we should probably look up this word Jehoshaphat to see if it actually means Armageddon. And we can actually quickly click over to the King James Plus, and we got verse 2. And bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and we can click on Jehoshaphat. And this comes from a couple of different words. Jehoshaphat, judged. And it comes from 3068. So we got to back up here. This comes from another, the self-extinct, eternal Jehovah. But is it really bringing us back to something? You know, it's starting to pop up. Jehoshaphat and 3089. We can quickly copy this, do a control, and we can paste it in here and see if we come up with anything. Sometimes this doesn't work, so if you back out of space and go 8199. Okay, a primitive root to judge. So we should probably take a look at what Armageddon does, but I think I'm going to let you do that on your own. What we're going to do is just basically look at, see if the Bible will explain what this Jehoshaphat is. "I will gather the armies of the world in the valley of Jehoshaphat. There I will judge them for harming my people, my special possession, for scattering my people among the nations, and for dividing up my land. They cast lots to decide which of his people would be their slaves. They traded boys to obtain prostitutes and sold girls for enough wine to get drunk." And this sounds pretty much like, you know, the Jerusalem of the Old Testament. "What do you have against me, Tyre and Sidon, and you cities of Philistia? Are you trying to take revenge on me? If they are, then watch out, I will strike swiftly and pay you back for everything you have done. You have taken my silver and my gold and all my precious treasures and have carried them off to the pagan temples. You have sold the people of Judah and Jerusalem to the Greeks, so you could take them far away from their homeland, but I will bring them back from the places of which you sold them, and I will pay you back for everything you have done. I will sell your sons and daughters to the people of Judah, and they will sell them to the people of Arabia, a nation far away. I, the Lord, have spoken. Okay, when we see this word, I should really have this highlighted, but the word say is like the beginning of a new statement from God. Say to the nations far and wide, get ready for war. Call out the best warriors. Let all your fighting men advance for the attack. Hammer your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Train even weaklings to be warriors. Come quickly, all you nations everywhere. Gather together in the valley. And now, O Lord, call out your warriors. Let the nations be called to arms. Let them march to the valley of Jehoshaphat. There, I, the Lord, will sit to pronounce judgment on them all. Now, when we see the word judgment, it brings us back, because realistically, if we look back from Revelation 19, but we're just going to read the next verse here and see how they link. Swing the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, tread the grapes, for the winepress is full. The stored vats are overflowing with the wickedness of these people. Thousands upon thousands are waiting in the valley of decision. There the day of the Lord will soon arrive. The sun and the moon will grow dark, and the suns will no longer shine. The Lord's voice will roar from Zion and thunder from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth will shake. But the Lord will be a refuge for his people, a strong fortress for the people of Jerusalem. Then you will know that I, the Lord your God, live in Zion, my holy mountain. Jerusalem will be holy forever and reign, and foreign armies will never conquer her again. Okay, that's basically enough. So let's just remember, we're talking about the harvest here, the winepress, and everything else. What does that have to do with Revelation 16 that we were looking at? Well, when we look at Revelation 16:1, it says then. So that's telling us we got to read the previous chapter. So if we look at 15, then I saw in heaven a marvelous great significance. The 7 angels were holding the 7 plagues, which would bring God's wrath to a completion. But when we see the word then, we look at the previous chapter, and I'm going to skip right down to the end. Then I saw a lamb standing. So it tells us we got to even look back another chapter, that all of this stuff is written in a specific order. And what do we see here? After that, I saw an angel come down from heaven, and he had a sharp sickle. And then the angel who had power to destroy the earth came to the earth. He shouted, the angel with the sharp sickle, swing your sickle now, and gather the cluster of grapes from the vines of the earth, for they are ripe from judgment. So we can see that in Joel here, we have something in common. When we look at the entire story, we go back to Revelation 14, it's talking about the harvest. So when we look at Joel here, and we see the harvest is ripe, there's only one harvest of the earth. The judgment. People are judged. There's a separation between the good and the evil. The good are saved for eternity. The evil are condemned for eternity. And we saw that when we look back at Revelation 15. Then I saw in heaven another marvelous, great significance, 7 angels holding the last 7 plagues. But when we go on to 16, when we look at the first of the 7 plagues, go your way and pour out on the earth the 7 bowls containing God's wrath. So the first angel left the temple and poured out his bowl on earth, and horrible malignant sores broke out on everyone who had the mark of the beast and who had worshipped the statue. So you see, they're marked in the first of the last 7 plagues. But what do we get when we look at Joel and we went over it? We see all of these things. They cast lots to decide which of my people would be slaves. They traded boys to obtain prostitutes and sold girls for enough wine to get drunk. Isn't that what's happening today? So we can see that a lot of times when we follow along with this TSK, this chain reference, that we can pick up information that fills in a couple of question marks. So we're going to go back and look at Zechariah, and it starts right after the introduction. Watch is a good word that tells us, this is the beginning of a new theme. Watch, for the day of the Lord is coming when your possessions will be plundered right in front of you. I will gather all the nations to fight against Israel. The city will be taken, the houses looted, and a woman raped. Half the population will be taken into captivity, and the rest will be left among the ruins of the city. Does this sound a lot like Joel? Yeah, it does. Then the Lord will go out to fight against those nations as he has fought in past times. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives east of Jerusalem, and on the Mount of Olives will be split apart, making a wide valley running from the east to the west. Half the mountains will move towards the north and half towards the south. How often does something like this going to happen? You will flee through this valley, for it will reach across to Azel. Yes, you will flee as you did from the earthquake in the days of King Uzziah of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and all his holy ones with him. On that day, the sources of light will no longer shine. There will be continuous day. Only the Lord knows how this will happen. There will be no normal day and night. For the evening time, it will be light. On that day, life-giving waters will flow from Jerusalem, half towards the Dead Sea and half towards the Mediterranean, flowing continuously in both summer and winter. And the Lord will be their king over all the earth. On that day, there will be one Lord. His name alone will be worshipped. Now, when you're talking about this, are we kind of getting more into the first battle or the second battle? Well, where we take a couple of the keywords, a couple of the main thoughts, and look at which one it's going to fit in better. And after Satan was taken out for 1,000 years, and all this, Jesus was sitting, with all the people who were beheaded for his testimony and everything else. They all came to life again, and they reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. This is the first resurrection. The rest of the dead did not come back to life until 1,000 years are ended. And then Satan was deceived, and he saw I saw them as they went out in the broad plain and surrounded God's people, a beloved city, and fire and attacked. And the devil saw him, and he was deceived. And I saw a great throne, and the one sitting on it, and the earth and sky fled from his presence. And the dead, both small and great, were taken out of the book, and the sea gave up its dead, and the lake of fire was thrown in the lake of fire. And the story continues in chapter 21. where a new heaven and a new earth came down, for it had disappeared, and I saw the city of New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, and I saw, look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them forever, and he will wipe away every tear and sorrow and pain. And he is sitting there, look, I am making everything new. And then he said to me, write down, for this is trustworthy and true. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning of the end, and I will give freely from the springs of the water of life. Okay, so it talks about the city. It's shone with the glory of God and sparkle like precious jewels and jasper, and the 12 angels and the name and everything else, and they measure the city and the walls of the city and all the pearls and all the jewels and everything else. And the city has no need of sun or moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city, and the Lamb is its light. Now, when we get back to Zechariah, and it talks about the on that day the sources of light will no longer shine, yet there will be a continuous day. Only the Lord knows how this will happen. So it says on that day. So is Zechariah talking about the first battle or the second battle? I'd say pretty much getting into the second battle. And then they've got these other references. The Hebrew, we can click on to 9:11. Their king is the angel from the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, in the Greek Apollon, and the destroyer. The first terror is past, but look, 2 more terrors are coming. So this adds in a little bit of information. They're actually calling the angel of the bottomless pit, we know as Satan, is called the destroyer. So we gather a little bit of information there. We can go on to John chapter 5. Okay, afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city, near the sheep gate, was the pool of Bathsheba with 5 covered porches. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, and paralyzed, lay in the porches. Does this really have anything to do with Armageddon? Well, not really. Okay, John 19:13. When they said this, Pilate brought Jesus out to them again, and Pilate sat down on the judgment seat, and the bottom is called the stone pavement in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Well, okay, does this have anything to do with Armageddon? Well, not really. But remember, when we were looking up, Jehoshaphat meant judgment. So basically, the people who put this chain reference together took that judgment and decided they were going to expound on it. Okay, Acts 26. We all fell down. I heard a voice saying to me in Aramaic, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It is useless for you to fight against my will. This is obviously where Jesus ran into Saul, was later called Paul, on the road to Emmaus. Does it have anything to do with Armageddon? No, not really, but the people that put it together. So these chain references can be good, but they can really get you off on a different course. It all depends on the mindset of the person that put the chain reference together. But remember, a lot of Bibles that were written by specific denominations tend to put their chain reference together to go along with their denominational beliefs. So you got to be careful using these chain references, okay? So we go to Judges chapter 5. The kings of Canaan came and fought in Tanakh near Megiddo Springs, but they carried off no silver treasures. The stars fought from heaven. The stars in their orbits fought against Assyria. The Kishon Valley. Does it have anything to do with Armageddon? There's a definite link that most people see between Armageddon and Megiddo. Okay, so you can study this off on your own. You can go and look up Megiddo in the King James, see what it actually means. We're just going to take a quick look at it. Just one of them, ravenous, and it's from 1413. I guess, yeah, we kind of learned this lesson. We can double click and we can copy this because we got to back out a little bit of it anyway. So if we paste that in here and we want to back out to 13, guess what? We back that out, it takes us right to 13. So we learned something new. Okay, a primitive root took crowd. So this isn't really getting us anywhere, but we really don't know until we start looking. That's the main thing. So if we go to 2 Kings, sometimes 2 Kings has a little bit of information on some of the battles that we can compare to what's happening today. Well, Josiah was king. Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went to the Euphrates River to help the king of Assyria. King Josiah and his army marched out to fight them, but King Necho killed him when they met at Megiddo. So they decided to, put the references of Megiddo in with Armageddon. Are they the same? Well, we looked at it and we didn't really get anything out of the Hebrew word Megiddo. But we got one more that we're going to take a look at. In Zechariah chapter 12. The sorrow and mourning in Jerusalem on that day will be great, like the mourning for Hadad, Rimmon, and the valley of Megiddo. All Israel will mourn, each clan by itself, and with the husbands separate from their wives. The clan of David will mourn alone, as with the clan of Nathan. Well, of course, we got to back up. For on that day, I will begin to destroy all the nations that came against Jerusalem. They will pour out my spirit of grace and prayer on the family of David and on the people of Jerusalem. They will look on me, who they have pierced, and mourn for them as for an only son. They will grieve bitterly for him as a firstborn son who had died. Well, this really gets back to some of these references that we saw in here in John and Acts and everything, to where people have put this chain reference together. Thought it was important to link Jesus' judgment by the world with Armageddon, Megiddo. So, you can take it for what it's worth, but at least you got a chance to see, when we put this stuff together, and we take a look at Armageddon down here, you can follow the chain reference and pick up a couple of good references to where we saw the buying and selling of boys and girls and everything else that fit right in with the first battle. But then you see how important it is when you put this stuff together, even from a chain reference, that you got to look at these things and put them together in the context of the same story, the same theme. So I hope you learned a little lesson here. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share and subscribe. So got any questions? We're gonna go on and take a look at some other features that eSword offers and a couple of other study methods that we're actually going to take a look at keywords and how they can reveal the main theme. And it was another thing we probably should have taken a look at is look at the keywords. But I think we learned a little bit about the keywords when we started linking, the city has no need for light. Oh, that's in 2 stories. So this one fits in that story. And what was the other one that we saw that we took a look at that we linked together? The beast and the false prophet, and then we linked together, back from Joel. So anyway, hope you liked it. Probably should have been better, but we're gonna have some future classes on some future subjects. You just gotta wait to see what the world's gonna throw at us next and what seems to be important to study. So don't forget to subscribe.